Okay, let's talk about Chapter 16 in Healthcare Finance. This chapter reviews operating budgets. I have the screen recording from the PowerPoint, but I'm not going to read the PowerPoint to you. You're welcome to review it and ask me questions. But I want to read. I like to read from the book and flip through as almost like I would do if I was teaching in the classroom. Okay, so Chapter 16, the overview is listed there on page 177. Objectives for the budgeting process. Healthcare Standards View Budgeting. The American Hospital Association is one of the governing agencies for healthcare finance. So the objectives is to provide a written expression in quantitative terms of a hospital's policies and plans. That's very important that it's written. That way, any auditing agencies or any managers or whomever, there is a guideline, if you will. Objective number 2, to provide a basis for the evaluation of financial performance in accordance with the hospital policies and plans, because of course the performance is important. If you don't perform well over a certain number of years, you're not going to be able to stay open. Objective number 3, to provide a useful tool for the control of cost. I am a Wake Med nurse, and we used to get Wake Share bonus checks, if you will. Was it quarterly? No, it wasn't quarterly. It was yearly. And it was based off of how much money we saved the hospital in general, whether it was turning lights off or not ordering unnecessary supplies, keeping track of supplies, etc. It was a hospital-wide initiative. Everybody got it. Anyway, let's keep going. Objective number 4, to create cost awareness throughout the organization. So that's what we used to do at Wake Med. But everybody should be aware. We should never waste linen. We should never, in a medical office building, you should never waste pens or paper or such as that. So, but the budgeting and the objectives are very, very important to have in writing. Okay, so operating budgets versus capital expenditure budgets. Operating budgets typically are short-term and have like a 12-month period. That is, even though it's a year, it's still short-term when you're talking about healthcare finance or a medical office building or medical office. I can't talk. A medical office or a hospital would budget for a year at a time. That is considered short-term. So again, let me repeat that. Operating budgets are usually over a 12-month period. Capital expenditure budgets is usually in the future. That's, what do you have on hand as far as capital, and what are the expenditures going to be in the future? Okay, so I flip to page 178. Transactions outside the operating budget. So figure 16.2 is listed or referenced here. Many grants received, this is important to know, many grants received by healthcare organizations are restricted funds. What that means is they cannot intertwine it with the general operating budget, if you will. Can't mix money. So what you planned to spend cannot be mixed, or I think the book says commingled, with grant money. And that's just really important to know. Also, restricted funds generally require altogether separate accounting and reporting. Yes, because they do not want to mix. So hear me. This is 2022. We're coming off of COVID. And last year, for most of the year, the local hospitals received grant money from the federal government for COVID. They used some of that money to pay nurses, traveling nurses, to come into the hospitals, and they were paid very well. They were paid 3 to 4 times what us normal staff nurses were getting paid, just because the need was so desperate. So that money that, for example, I'm going to come back to Wake Med just because that's where I work. As a staff registered nurse, the average salary, depending on years of service, of course, maybe $45 an hour. We'll go with that. They were paying, the nurses standing beside of me in the emergency room in the ICU, they were paying them $165 an hour. And that was grant money from the federal government because of the COVID crisis. That money the travel nurse money did not come out of Wake Med's budget. There's no way they could have budgeted for that. So side note, it'll be very interesting to see how we come off of paying nurses $165 an hour back to staff nursing rates. It should be very interesting. But once that grant money is gone, I don't know how they'll continue it. But anyway, the point of that, I'm sorry I got off track, any grant money is restricted. You cannot mix it with your operating budget. All right, page 179, budget basics. There's a review. Identifiable versus allocated budget cost. Within a department, certain costs will be specifically identifiable while others will be allocated instead. Figure 16.3, direct patient care and supporting patient care should be most identifiable because that is your majority of the budget. So, of course, that should be most identifiable. General and administrative expenses, patient-related expenses will probably be mostly allocated cost. Financial related expense such as interest expense may not be included in the manager's budget. I feel like I'm reading this to you. Okay, so 180, I'm not going to read this whole chapter to you guys. Page 182, assumptions. Building a budget means making a series of assumptions. The budget process should begin with the review of a strategy and objectives. Forecasting workload is a critical part of building a budget. Forecasting is, we do it with our own budgets, right? You know, how much am I going to spend on gas this month or next month? Or, you know, gas prices in the month of March are very different than in the month of May, June, and July. Why is that? Because people travel for fun during the summertime. So we will forecast that gas prices will increase during those times. Certain food, fruits, you can forecast that they'll be higher during winter months because we're having to ship them from further away because it's cold around here. We can't grow our own strawberries, etc. Now, at healthcare, let me relate that to healthcare. So what if we forecast the cost of medicines, that type of thing? Maybe in a certain time period of the year, it's easier and cheaper to get printer paper or what have you. So that's how we would relate that to healthcare finance. But forecasting is important. Page 183, working with static budgets versus flexible budgets. Be sure and read this section. Break it down on paper if you have to. Say it out loud. Message me if you have any questions. I'll do my best to help you understand it. Static budget is essentially based on a single level of operations. After a static budget has been approved and finalized, the single level of operations is never adjusted. So that's static, okay? Then a flexible budget, it can be adjusted, flexed to the actual level of output achieved during the budget period. Thus looks towards the range of activity or volume. So versus only one level in the static budget. So that's the difference. Kind of self-explanatory, but sometimes these words even mix me up. So please don't hesitate to ask questions. Okay, moving on through the book, this chapter, well, that was it. That's short. It's just a short little, I think, simple chapter, but sometimes simple gets me. So just reach out to me again if you need me. Appendix 16A, just review that. DRGs, that's related to billing, insurances, etc. Good to know. And yeah, oh, here's another appendix. Oh, here's reviewing the comparative operating budget. So this would be great. Oh, there's nurses' salaries, there's maintenance salaries, or purchase maintenance, maintenance in general. Recovery room, breaks it down operating room. So that's a neat little appendix. And then we're into chapter 17, so I'll make another video for that. Again, please, anytime, ask me questions about any of this material, and I will help you understand it better. Thanks.